When I finally decided to leave everything behind, I called Emily Carter and told her I was going abroad, might not even come back. On the other end of the line, the girl I had chased for 9 years went silent for a second, then hung up without a word. I stared at the screen for a long time, watching the call end tone fade like a last heartbeat. 9 years. You'd think after 9 years of devotion, I'd get at least a "take care," even if I were a damn stray dog whining outside her door. But to her, maybe I wasn't even worth that. Maybe Coke the dog she and her ex bought together meant more to her than I ever did. That dog was part of her love story. I was just an unpaid extra. I stood on my balcony in Seattle and raised my middle finger in the vague direction of Bright Edge Tech's headquarters and muttered, "I'm done being your emotional janitor." Right then, my phone buzzed like crazy. Turns out, I'd sent the going abroad news to our friend group just before calling her. And unlike her, my friends actually cared. Even Jake Bennett, me workaholic best friend who sometimes ghosted chats for 2 weeks straight, called me 4 times and followed up with 20 messages and enough shocked emojis to fill a comic strip. Everyone was checking in. Except her. The one I cared about most didn't even flinch. What was I even expecting at this point? While replying to my friend's concern, I tried to piece together when things had truly gone wrong. Emily was the cold, unapproachable queen of Lincoln High. Even there, among some of the most brilliant kids, she stood out. The girl was an academic genius with model-like proportions and a face people didn't forget. She didn't flaunt it, but people noticed. Everyone noticed. Guys would leave gifts on her desk anonymously. Girls would ask her to help them study just to talk to her. She wasn't just out of my league, she was in a whole other universe. We were classmates, but back then, our interactions were minimal. I was the class monitor, that reliable guy who handled boring administrative stuff, including the yearbook and registration info. One day, the household registration binder disappeared, and I nearly lost my mind. That binder had decades of information, and I was sure I'd screwed up everything. Everyone claimed they hadn't seen it. I stayed late trying to figure it out, beating myself up over it. That was when Emily, of all people, walked up to me, gently tapped my shoulder, and said, "Your classmate had it. Here." She handed over the binder, eyes calm, voice low. My desk partner, some sleepy dude, had apparently passed out and forgotten he had taken it. Emily had scolded him and retrieved it for me. "Don't stress too much," she added. Just those 4 words, but I felt something shift inside me. A seed was planted. I don't know if it was gratitude, infatuation, or delusion, but from that moment on, I was hooked. After that, I started noticing her more, her routines, her quirks, the way she pushed her glasses up with her pinky finger, the way she lingered behind after class. She and I took the same bus home. No. 12. One evening, she stayed back, and we walked together. She said, "Let's go," and I followed. That chase lasted 9 damn years. We got into Columbia University together. She remained aloof, and I became the one constantly orbiting her. Every class project she had, I volunteered. She joined the debate team. I sourced arguments, fact-checked statistics, rehearsed debates with her. I did everything short of breathing for her. I wasn't subtle about my feelings. Everyone in our circle knew I liked her. And I believed she knew too. But I told myself she was just shy, or emotionally distant, or didn't know how to express it. I mean, she didn't let any other guy this close. Just me, right? There was a time she practically lived in the campus library. I'd bring her breakfast, drop off snacks, sometimes sit there for hours just to make sure she didn't skip meals. She always took the food. Quietly. No thank yous. No smiles. But I thought her silence was consent, maybe even affection. Then, during our junior year, she made it official on WeChat, in the debate team's group chat. Emily Carter and Ryan Brooks. Together. Official. I remember staring at my screen for minutes, thinking it was some prank. I even clicked into her profile to double-check. Nope. She posted a picture with him. Everyone in the photo was blurry except for the two of them holding a championship trophy, standing side by side like some poster couple. And the look on her face, tender, proud, even affectionate, was something I had never, ever seen directed at me. I remember Jake pacing the dorm room, swearing under his breath, trying to cheer me up. Nathan, our usually chill roommate, came over and asked if I was okay. I wasn't. But I forced a smile. Said I never had that kind of interest in her anyway. Bull. I lied to their faces and mine. Emily later brought Ryan to meet all her friends including me. I said hi, played the cheerful friend, even cracked a joke or two. Ryan was a decent guy, black coat, sharp eyes, confident posture. I didn't blame him. Or her. They were never mine. I had no right to be mad. I was just the friend who hovered. The backup. The convenient doormat. She looked relieved when she saw me acting normal. Like she was worried I'd lose it. And still, I didn't walk away. I kept being that guy. Until the night Ryan left for grad school overseas and broke up with her. Emily got drunk and called me. I rushed over like a fool. Found her sitting alone, red-eyed, mascara smudged. I carried her home. Helped her into bed. As I turned to leave, she grabbed my arm and kissed the corner of my mouth. Then she pulled back, looked stunned like she'd made a mistake and shut the door in my face. The next day. Don't overthink it. That was all she texted. I didn't reply. But I still stayed. Same company, same roles. She kept being the star. I kept being the reliable second lead. Bright Edge Tech became our post-grad stomping ground. She was the spotlight, I was the stagehand. I was still picking up her slack, organizing her data, prepping her meeting decks. I convinced myself I didn't mind. Because I liked her. Because I was loyal. Because 9 years meant something, damn it. But that phone call today, that dead tone, was the final straw. No care. No emotion. Just silence. Like I'd been yelling into a void for nearly a decade. And for the first time ever, I realized maybe she heard me all along. She just didn't care. And I was finally done being quiet. I used to think I was the dependable one, the type of person others could lean on, the kind who remembers your coffee order, walks your dog when you're too busy, and fills your fridge when you're stressed out. But after that silent phone call with Emily, something in me cracked. For the first time in 9 years, I realized how humiliating it was to give and give without ever being seen, let alone loved. And as if the universe wanted to rub it in, she texted me a single message that afternoon: remember Coke's walk at 6. I have a meeting. Not a, how are you, or, let's talk before you go, just a reminder to walk the dog that wasn't even mine. The same dog she bought with Ryan. The same dog I fed, groomed, and took to the vet while she was too caught up in her breakup spiral. It hit me then Emily Carter didn't see me as a person. I was just the emotional butler, the dog-walking assistant, the man who handled her leftovers. So I deleted her message, shoved my phone into my pocket, and left to meet Jake. And that's when Sophie Lee entered my life like a damn sunbeam crashing into a pitch-black room. Jake introduced her casually: this is Sophie, the intern I stole from your team. Thought she could use dinner, and you could use distraction, but nothing about her was casual. She had this energy that reminded me of sunflowers in full bloom, bright and effortless. While Emily had the kind of beauty that made people whisper and tiptoe around her, Sophie was the type that made you feel like the world wasn't so heavy after all. She called me brother in that chirpy voice that made Jake roll his eyes, but I didn't mind. She said things like, "I won't cause you any trouble, I promise," and "You look like someone who doesn't laugh enough," and somehow made me laugh more in 30 minutes than I had in the last 3 years. Dinner was loud, fun, chaotic in the best way, and when Sophie waved goodbye with her little snack bag, I actually caught myself smiling like an idiot. I hadn't felt that light in ages. Jake, being Jake, didn't let it go. "You're glowing. Either you fell in love with the intern, or you finally got closure from your favorite ice queen." I rolled my eyes and said nothing. But something was different. He could tell. When he asked why I wanted to go abroad, I hesitated. I wasn't even sure anymore. Maybe it was a form of revenge. Maybe I just wanted Emily to panic for once. Wanted her to say, "Don't go." But she didn't. Not even a text. Not even about Coke. Meanwhile, Sophie, someone who barely knew me, asked me why I was leaving as if she actually cared. "You haven't done anything wrong," she said, eyes wide and sincere. "Why should you be the one leaving?" Jake backed her up immediately. "You joined that company because of Emily. You've done your time. Now get out, and build something for yourself." I opened my mouth to argue, but Sophie cut in with her classic directness. "My senior's firm is hiring. You're smart, capable, and handsome. I'll send your resume. Just go meet him." I didn't say yes. I didn't say no. But I didn't stop her either. That night, back in my apartment, I stared at the resume draft Sophie had helped polish and realized she even knew how to word my leadership experience better than I did. She called me a natural strategic thinker with high emotional intelligence. I stared at that phrase for so long, I almost believed it. Then, just as I was about to text her a thank you, a knock came at the door. It was Emily. Of course. She was wearing a white dress, arms crossed like she was still in control of everything. "You didn't walk Coke today," she said, brows creased. "You took a day off." Her tone made it sound like I had violated a work contract. I almost laughed. "You're mad about your dog's walk," I said flatly. She blinked. Probably didn't expect me to talk back. "Don't you think you owe me?" she finally asked. That was the moment something in me snapped. "What exactly do I owe you, Emily?" I asked quietly. 9 years of free emotional labor. 9 years of playing best friend while you fed every version of your affection to someone else. She just stood there, stunned, and I slammed the door in her face. It was petty. It was long overdue. And it felt damn good. Just as I was catching my breath from the adrenaline rush, my phone buzzed. It was Sophie, sending me a string of emojis and a "My senior says your resume is fire fire fire, when are you free to interview?" I laughed. Then, unable to help myself, I sent her a voice message retelling how I just face-slammed the door on Emily Carter. Sophie instantly replied, "LMO. Dog woman got what she deserved, dog-faced door. I couldn't stop smiling. The next day, Jake, Sophie, and I went out again. Jake brought snacks and even shoved theater tickets into my hand. "Company gift. You and Sunshine over there need a proper night out," he said with a wink. Sophie held the door for me like a gentleman in reverse and declared, "Tonight, I'm the one spoiling my male god." I should have cringed. I didn't. We watched a local play. She whispered jokes in my ear the whole time and kept nudging my shoulder whenever something dramatic happened. I hadn't laughed like that in a decade. Then, in the middle of that soft, glowing, perfect moment, I looked across the theater and locked eyes with Ryan Brooks. And right next to him Emily. She looked immaculate, collected, cold. But the moment she saw me whispering and smiling with Sophie, her entire posture shifted. It was small, barely noticeable, but I caught it. Her eyes dimmed. Her shoulders tensed. She looked Uncomfortable. Good. Let her be uncomfortable. Let her feel even 1% of what I felt for 9 years. After the show, I bumped into her outside the bathroom. She asked coldly, "Who is she?" I stared at her. "It doesn't concern you." "You said you liked me," she said sharply, like she was accusing me of betrayal. Past tense, I replied. "I did." "Not anymore." Her eyes narrowed. "You've only known her for a few days. Is that how cheap your feelings are?" My lips curved up into a smile. "No. But that's exactly how worthless you made me feel." And before she could respond, Sophie appeared beside me and casually put her arm through mine. "You ready?" she asked, pretending not to notice the tension. "Yeah," I said, turning away without another glance at Emily. As we walked off together, Sophie leaned closer and whispered, "If I were her, I'd regret everything too." I didn't reply. I didn't need to. I just tightened my grip on her arm and kept walking, knowing that for the first time in 9 years, I wasn't chasing someone else's shadow. Someone had finally turned around and chosen me. I used to think leaving was the most dramatic, soul-shaking move I could ever make. Like, wow, pack your bags, quit your job, vanish abroad, cue slow-motion montage and violin music. But the weirdest part was, after all that build-up, when I actually said it out loud, no one fought to stop me. Not Emily. Not her friends. Not her coworkers. Not even Coke, the dog I raised like some four-legged stepchild from a relationship that never even included me. Only Jake lost it, which, honestly, is so on brand. "You sent a damn one-liner saying you're leaving the country and ghosted me," he practically screamed into the phone, voice half static, half betrayal. "I was in a meeting, staring at my screen for 20 minutes waiting for your reply. I almost got roasted by my boss. He didn't even wait for me to respond before bulldozing through a guilt-trip-laced monologue and demanding we grab drinks. And because I was still too emotionally hungover to think straight, I said yes. I was halfway out the door when Emily texted, 6 p.m. Coke's walk. That was it. No, are you okay? No, don't leave. Just a reminder that I was still on dog duty. The irony of that hit me square in the gut. I'd become so good at taking care of her life, her dog, her everything, that even when I was leaving the country, she didn't think twice about asking for favors. Or maybe she didn't even see it as a favor. Maybe, to her, I was just the default setting. But you know what really killed me? That Coke wasn't even my dog. She and Ryan got him together during their honeymoon phase. When Ryan bailed and left her broken, I stepped in to keep the damn dog alive. I bought food, walked him, cleaned up puke from the hallway at 2 a.m. when he had a bad stomach. And the whole time, I kept telling myself that maybe, just maybe, my quiet loyalty would mean something. Spoiler alert, it didn't. On my way out to meet Jake, I couldn't stop replaying that in my head. Every tiny way I'd shrunk myself to fit into her life without taking up too much space. I fed the dog that symbolized her relationship with someone else. I organized her calendar. I remembered her deadlines. I sat through awkward group dinners where she'd smile at Ryan like he was the sun, while I sat next to her like a damn potted plant. And even when they broke up, she never turned to men it really. Not when it mattered. When I arrived at the bar, Jake was already 2 beers in and mid-rant. But next to him was someone unexpected, Sophie. She lit up the room like someone had unmuted all the color, and I felt myself involuntarily straighten up. Jake played it off as casual, like, oh, she just happened to be free, and I figured you'd both benefit from the emotional support animal that is Sophie, but I saw right through him. This was a setup. Sophie greeted me with her usual sunny enthusiasm. "Hey, brother. Long time no see like. 2 days." I laughed in spite of myself. She had that effect. She turned awkward silence into shared inside jokes within 5 seconds. Jake kept watching us like a proud dad, sipping his beer and raising his brows every time we made eye contact. But Sophie was the real surprise of the night. She was sweet, funny, full of casual confidence, and totally unaware of how healing it felt to just be around her. She didn't walk on eggshells. She didn't flinch when I mentioned Emily. She just listened. Offered me napkins when I got heated about Coke. Refilled my water without making a scene. And then, out of nowhere, she dropped the bomb. "You know, my senior is hiring for a project lead at Silverleaf Solutions," she said between bites of nachos. "They need someone with your skills. I already sent him your resume." I blinked. "Wait, you what? You weren't going to apply anywhere else, so I did it for you," she said, smiling so casually it knocked the air out of my lungs. "You deserve better. And this job? It's better." Jake raised his glass like she'd just won an award. Sunshine Girl strikes again. I was speechless for a moment. No one had ever taken that kind of initiative for me. Ever. It made me realize how used I'd gotten to people expecting me to do the heavy lifting emotionally, logistically, all of it. But here was Sophie, treating me like I was worth investing in. Not because she expected something back. Just because she believed I deserved more. The next day, I got the interview. Then the offer. And with a clarity I hadn't felt in years, I walked into Bright Edge and handed in my resignation. My manager looked mildly surprised but accepted it with the kind of polite neutrality reserved for office plants and broken staplers. As I was packing up my desk, Emily walked in. She froze when she saw the box of my things. "You're really leaving?" she asked, voice low. I nodded. "You didn't tell me." I almost laughed. "Did I need to?" "Well, no," but she trailed off, staring at the framed photo I'd taken down from our team outing last year, the one where she stood between me and Ryan like a queen flanked by 2 pawns. "What about the project handoff?" she asked instead. "It's all in the shared drive," I replied, grabbing my keys. "And the client presentation next week?" "I wrote the full pitch deck. You just have to show up and read." She didn't say thank you. Of course not. Just stood there, arms crossed, watching me walk away. When I got outside, Sophie was waiting by her car, holding 2 iced coffees and bouncing on her toes like she couldn't wait to share good news. "Guess what?" she said before I could even get in. "My senior says you're the best applicant they've had in years. He said your strategic analysis was flawlessly brutal. That's actually the best compliment I've had all year." "Of course it is. You're amazing," and I told him that. I smiled and took the coffee she handed me. It was perfect. Exactly how I liked it: no sugar, extra ice, touch of cinnamon. "How'd you remember this?" I asked. "I'm observant," she said proudly. "And nosy." We drove off, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I didn't check my phone to see if Emily had messaged me. I didn't think about Coke. I didn't think about the past. I just stared out the window, holding iced coffee in one hand and Sophie's laughter in my ears, and wondered when my life had shifted so quietly into something that almost felt like happiness. That night, after dinner, we were walking back to our cars when Sophie stopped. "Can I ask something dumb?" "Always." "Do you still think about her?" My heart skipped a beat. Not because I was surprised, of course, that question was coming, but because I didn't expect it to feel so easy to answer. "I used to think about her every day," I said honestly. "Now, not so much." "That's not a no," she said softly. "It's not," I admitted. "But the difference is, I'm not waiting for her anymore." Sophie smiled. Not one of those sad, tight-lipped, resigned smiles. A real one. "Okay," she said. Then I'll wait for you to stop thinking about her completely. I stopped walking and turned to face her. You won't have to wait long. Then, without thinking, I reached out and took her hand. She didn't flinch. Didn't overanalyze. Just held it like it was always meant to fit there. We kept walking under the streetlights, fingers intertwined, and I knew this wasn't the beginning of a rebound. This was something real. Something mine. It was wild how quickly my life pivoted once I stopped orbiting around Emily Carter. Like actually wild. One minute I was the dependable guy wiping her emotional messes, the next I was sitting across from Sophie Lee in a sunny cafe, watching her try to bite into a giant sandwich without unhinging her jaw like a cartoon snake. She kept insisting she could handle it. Spoiler alert, she couldn't. Lettuce flew. Sauce landed on her cheek. She looked mortified, and all I could do was laugh until I couldn't breathe. I used to think love was this quiet, painful longing, the kind where you suffer in silence and call it romance. But with Sophie, everything felt so easy. So loud and bright and human. I started looking forward to things again. Like texting her good morning before coffee. Like hearing her complain about her team's chaotic spreadsheets. Like seeing that tiny eye roll when I teased her. Her reactions weren't calculated or cryptic, they were pure. And I didn't realize how starved I'd been for that until I had it. Meanwhile, Emily. She didn't take my resignation well. She tried to play it cool, but I caught the flicker of panic when I told her I'd already accepted a new offer. Her mask cracked even more when she saw me walk out of Bright Edge with Sophie, our fingers brushing as we passed her in the lobby. That moment stayed with Menet because it felt like revenge, but because it was the first time she saw me as something other than her safety net. At my new job, I was thriving. The environment at Silverleaf was fast-paced, collaborative, and shockingly chill. My ideas were heard. My contributions respected. It was everything I didn't know I needed. I fell into a rhythm: morning coffee, work sprints, lunch with Sophie, spontaneous bubble tea runs, shared playlists during late-night slide deck edits. She even started showing up at my office with 2 lunchboxes sewn for me, one for herself. I can't cook, she admitted one day, but I know good takeout. I never told her that I started eating slower just to make our lunch breaks last longer. One afternoon, as we were cleaning up our takeout boxes, she looked at me and said, "You know, I think I'm catching feelings." I froze. Like, allergies? I joked, trying to cover my heart doing backflips. "No, idiot," she laughed, throwing a napkin at me. "For you." And just like that, the moment I'd been cautiously waiting for slammed into me with full force. I didn't know what to say. I just smiled, wide and stupid and totally gone for her. That night, we went for a walk. The weather was just chilly enough to justify the shared hoodie situation, hers, obviously. She tugged it tighter around her and said, "You know, if you keep spoiling me like this, I might start thinking I'm your girlfriend." "Then let's make that official," I said before I could stop myself. Her eyes went wide, and then she grinned. "So, this is the part where we take a selfie and announce it to the world, right?" "Absolutely not," I said, half laughing. "Let me at least survive the soft launch stage." She dramatically gasped. "You don't want the internet to know you're dating me?" "I don't want the internet to ruin you," I said. "You're too good for that chaos." The days blurred in the best way. I started cooking again, something I hadn't done since college. I'd bring over homemade pasta or braised ribs, and Sophie would light up like I'd just handed her the moon. "You're like husband material," she said one night. "Like, dangerously so." "Dangerous?" I teased. "Should I be worried?" "Yes," she replied. "Because I might actually get used to this." That terrified me more than I cared to admit. Not because I didn't want it, but because deep down, I knew exactly what it felt like to love someone who never gave it back. I never wanted Sophie to feel like that. Not ever. So I doubled down. I asked about her childhood, her favorite teacher, the book that made her cry. I remembered the way she hated mint chocolate but loved it when I added cinnamon to her coffee. I showed you every day, on time, emotionally and mentally. And she did too. But as always, the past had a way of circling back. Ryan Brooks came back from overseas and rejoined Bright Edge. Emily, of course, latched onto him like no time had passed. She made it clear through mutuals and passive-aggressive Instagram stories that they were reconnecting. What she didn't say, but everyone could read between the lines, was that she expected me to care. I didn't. Not until she showed up at my apartment again, Coke in tow, acting like she was doing me a favor. "You forgot his vitamins," she said. "And he misses you." I looked down at Coke, who wagged his tail and looked up at me like he hadn't been part of the most humiliating chapter of my life. "You still have the automatic feeder?" I asked. "Yeah, but," she trailed off, clearly expecting more. "Then you're good." I shut the door without another word. That night, I told Sophie everything. Not just the Coke thing, but all of it, though I'd wasted years waiting for someone who couldn't even look me in the eye when I cried. How I'd convinced myself that my devotion would eventually earn me love. How I still felt guilty for walking away, even now. She didn't say anything for a while. Just scooted closer, rested her head on my shoulder, and whispered, "You didn't walk away. You finally walked towards something that was always waiting for you." I kissed her that night. Really kissed her. Not some rebound-laced, hesitant maybe. But the kind that made everything else go quiet. The kind that said I was choosing her. And that I'd do it again tomorrow. The next morning, Jake called. "Bro," he said dramatically, "you're glowing through the phone." "Go away," I groaned. "I'm happy, that's all." "No, no. This is like real. You're finally out of the Emily matrix." I laughed. "Maybe I am." That day, I got an invitation to present at a major pitch meeting. It was a huge opportunity, something I would have killed for back at Bright Edge but never got close to. I prepped for days. Sophie helped me rehearse, nitpicked my slide order, and even ironed my damn shirt. "You got this," she said, squeezing my hand before I walked into the boardroom. And you know what? I did. I crushed that presentation. The clients were nodding before I even finished. My team clapped. My manager pulled me aside afterward and said, "That was the cleanest pitch I've seen all quarter." And then, outside the building, standing there like she still belonged in my story, was Emily. "I heard you presented today," she said, lips tight. "Congrats." "Thanks," I replied, already turning to leave. But then she added, "You look different." "Maybe I am," I said. "Maybe being loved changes people." Her face twitched. "By Sophie?" "Yes," I answered without hesitation. "By Sophie." At that exact moment, Sophie pulled up in her car, waving through the window with her usual bright grin. I walked straight to her, got in, and didn't look back. Emily stood on the curb like she was still processing the fact that I'd finally stopped looking at her. As we drove off, Sophie reached over and squeezed my knee. "How'd it go?" she asked. "Perfect," I said, watching the city lights blur past. Everything was perfect. After the pitch presentation, everything felt like it snapped into place, like I had finally stepped out of someone else's script and started writing my own. That room, those clients, the way they shook my hand and nodded like I was someone who mattered, it wasn't just professional validation, it was personal redemption. For years, I had poured every ounce of capability into someone else's spotlight, carrying all the weight behind the scenes while Emily soaked up the praise. But that day, under clean white lights, in a room where no one saw me as someone's assistant or leftover, I got to shine, and it didn't feel borrowed, it felt like mine. The moment I stepped out of that building, Sophie was already waiting for me outside like some rom-com cliché that somehow didn't feel cliché at all. She jumped up and waved the second she saw me, her ponytail bouncing, her smile too wide for her face, and my heart did that dumb flutter thing it always did when she looked at me like I was her entire sky. "How'd it go?" she called out before I even reached her. "You tell me," I grinned, and she immediately launched herself at me with a whoop that turned heads on the sidewalk. "My boyfriend is brilliant," she shouted, and I don't think I'd ever heard those words before, boyfriend and brilliant in the same breath, especially not directed at me. I kissed her right there in public, and for once, I didn't care who saw. It wasn't about proving anything to Emily anymore. It wasn't even about healing. It was just us. That night we ordered takeout, spread it out on my living room floor, and ate like two college kids who couldn't afford a dining table. Sophie kept throwing shrimp tails at me, and I kept threatening to ban her from all future meal plans. She laughed so hard she almost choked on a dumpling, and I swear I fell for her all over again. After dinner, I grabbed her wrist gently and said, "Let's take Coke for a walk." She blinked, surprised. "Really? You sure?" "Yeah," I nodded. "It's time I closed that door properly." Coke barked when he saw Maya's whole furry body vibrating with excitement like he hadn't been neglected for months by the person who actually adopted him. Emily opened the door with a confused look, clearly not expecting me. "I'm here for Coke," I said simply. She looked like she was about to argue, but then saw Sophie standing a few steps behind me, holding the leash I had brought. Her mouth snapped shut. "He's been a little moody," she muttered, "doesn't eat much." I didn't reply. I just bent down and clicked the leash into place. "We'll bring him back tonight," I said, even though we both knew I probably wouldn't. As we walked, Sophie stayed quiet for a few blocks before finally saying, "You okay?" "I will be," I said. "It's strange, you know. For a long time, I thought Coke was the only thing I had left from that part of my life. But maybe he deserves better too." We stopped at the dog park and watched Coke sniff around, chasing birds and failing spectacularly. "What happens now?" she asked, voice soft. "Now I figure out what life looks like when I'm not stuck in rewind." She looked at me for a long moment, then said, "I hope that includes me." I took her hand and squeezed. It better. The next few weeks were surprisingly quiet. No dramatic confrontations. No midnight texts from Emily. Just slow mornings, office coffee, and stolen glances across meetings where Sophie would draw little hearts on her notepad and pretend she wasn't flirting with me. Jake, of course, refused to let anything be subtle. "You're disgustingly in sync," he declared one day, flopping into the break room chair with his arms full of snacks. "I saw you two finish each other's sandwich orders." "We're efficient," Sophie said proudly, stealing one of his chips. "You're codependent," he shot back, and I just sipped my coffee and smiled because he wasn't entirely wrong. But I didn't mind it, not when that codependency felt like partnership, not servitude. Sophie was my equal. She challenged me. She annoyed me. She kept me grounded. And somewhere between those lunch breaks and late-night car rides, I stopped questioning it. One evening, as I was chopping vegetables for dinner, she came up behind me, wrapped her arms around my waist, and whispered, "You know, I've never had someone cook for me this much." I smiled, resting my hands over hers. "You deserve it." "So do you," she said. "You spent so long giving without getting anything back. I want to be the one who fills your plate." I turned and kissed her forehead. "You already are." That weekend, we went grocery shopping together for the first time, which should have been boring but somehow wasn't. She argued over brands, snuck chocolate into the cart, and accused me of being a health nut when I picked up kale. "You're 30 now, babe," she teased. "You have to start aging responsibly." "You're the one who eats 6 cookies a day," I reminded her. "And look how happy I am," she beamed. I looked at her across the aisle, standing there in her oversized hoodie and messy ponytail, and realized I didn't miss Emily at all. I didn't miss the silence, the guessing, the constant fear of overstepping. Sophie was loud, expressive, emotionally generous in ways that healed things I didn't know were broken. But just as life began to feel stable, the past tried one last time to push its way in. Emily emailed me out of nowhere. A single line, "Can we talk?" I stared at the screen for a long time before hitting delete. I didn't even feel conflicted. That same day, Sophie surprised me with 2 tickets to a stage play. "You've been working too hard," she said. "We need a fancy night." She showed up in a black dress that made me forget how to function. I held her hand the entire show, even when my palms got sweaty. She leaned her head on my shoulder during the sad parts and whispered commentary during the plot twists. We were walking out of the theater, laughing about how predictable the ending was, when I spotted Emily across the lobby. She saw me too. Her expression shifted instantly: recognition, then confusion, then something close to sadness. She didn't approach. Neither did I. I just looked at Sophie, who was telling me about the cast and the costumes and her ridiculous theory that the villain was secretly the romantic lead. I looked at her, fully and honestly, and thought, this is what I waited 9 years for. And I finally got it. Not in the form I imagined. Not with the person I originally wanted. But in the way that actually mattered. Sophie turned to me and asked, "What are you smiling at?" "Nothing," I said. "Just thinking about how much I like being with you." She grinned and squeezed my hand. "Good. Because you're stuck with me now. Promise?" "Double promise," she said, and I knew right then that the only closure I ever needed was already walking beside me. I used to think closure came in dramatic showdowns and teary goodbyes, like some final boss battle in a romance game, but it didn't. Not for me. For me, closure looked like a quiet Sunday morning where Sophie was sitting cross-legged on my couch in an oversized sweatshirt, hair still messy from sleep, munching on leftover dumplings and scrolling through dog memes. It looked like the soft light pouring through the blinds while Coke snored in the corner, finally settled into his new routine of daily walks, cuddles, and belly rubs that no longer revolved around Emily's mood swings. It looked like peace, underrated, beautiful peace, and I hadn't realized how starved I was for it until it arrived and made itself at home. That week, my college roommate Nathan came into town for a business trip, which immediately triggered an impromptu guys' night that Jake insisted on organizing. Naturally, Sophie insisted on crashing it. "What, you think I trust you 3 to be left unsupervised with tequila and emotional baggage?" she said, arms crossed and eyes glinting with amusement. Jake groaned and rolled his eyes, but Nathan just chuckled and gave her a fist bump, officially crowning her the group's emotional support chaos coordinator. We ended up back at my place with takeout bags, open beers, and far too much nostalgic music blaring in the background while Sophie sat between us, absolutely holding her own in arguments about who had the worst freshman dorm experience. Somewhere between the 4th round of drinks and an impromptu karaoke session that I deeply regretted once phone cameras came out, Sophie turned to me with that gleam in her eyes and said, "You know you're not allowed to leave me anymore, right?" And even though she was clearly teasing, part of me knew she meant it and part of me needed to hear it. Later that night, as we were walking to the milk tea shop because Jake and Nathan demanded something sweet to soak up the alcohol, Sophie and I fell behind, letting them argue over toppings like 2 toddlers in a sandbox. She looked up at me and said, "So, what do we call this now? You and me?" I knew she wasn't asking for a label, she was asking for clarity, for honesty. And I wanted to give her all of it. "We call this home," I said, not missing a beat. Her smile was quiet and wide, like I'd just handed her the thing she didn't know she'd been holding her breath for. "That's cheesy as hell," she said, but her voice cracked a little at the edges, and I knew she felt it too. We walked back hand in hand, our fingers swinging between us, and I kept thinking, this is what it should have always felt like, guessing, no waiting, no aching just to be seen. But of course, life had one more interruption queued up before it let me fully close the chapter on Emily Carter. It happened the following week. I had just come home from a long meeting, arms full of groceries, when I opened the door and found Emily standing outside, Coke's leash in her hand, her hair pulled back too tight, her expression one I couldn't quite read. "He misses you," she said, gesturing to the dog, who perked up and wagged his tail at the sight of me. "That's not true," I replied softly, stepping back. "You just miss having someone who handled everything." She looked stunned, like she hadn't expected me to say that. "I thought we had something," she said, and I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. "We did," I said. "But it was all one-sided. You liked knowing I'd always be there. I liked pretending I could earn your love if I stayed long enough. But that wasn't a relationship, Emily. That was codependency dressed up as loyalty." "So what, now you're perfect with her?" she asked bitterly. "With Sophie?" "No," I said calmly. "I'm not perfect. But I'm finally happy. I don't have to beg her to care. She just does. And you know what? That's enough for me." Emily didn't speak. She just stared at me like I was a stranger, and in some ways, I wasn't the girl who once waited 3 hours in the rain outside her dorm just to walk her to class. I wasn't the girl who memorized her coffee order, her deadlines, her every emotional trigger. I was someone new now, someone who stopped asking to be chosen. She finally nodded, dropped Coke's leash at my feet, and walked away. And this time, I didn't feel like chasing after her. That night, Sophie came over with 3 bags of groceries and a plan to make homemade pizza even though neither of us had ever made dough from scratch. We flour-bombed the kitchen, burned the first batch, and ended up eating slightly undercooked crust while watching a cheesy drama about a girl who accidentally marries a billionaire. Somewhere between episodes, she rested her head on my shoulder and whispered, "You've been quiet today." I took a deep breath. She came by. She sat up, alert. "Emily?" I nodded. "Gave me a final shot at whatever we used to be." "And?" I said no, I replied, locking eyes with her. "I already have everything I need right here." Her eyes filled, and she blinked fast, clearly not wanting to cry, which only made her cuter. "Good," she whispered. Because I was ready to fight her in the parking lot. I laughed so hard I snorted, and she tackled me onto the couch like a human heater, arms and legs wrapped around me like she was trying to fuse us into one person. "You're stuck with me," she mumbled into my shoulder. "Don't ever forget it." "Never," I promised. Weeks passed. Our relationship settled into something beautifully ordinary. We cooked together, worked side by side, occasionally argued about dumb things like laundry cycles or whether pineapple belonged on pizza. It did, for the record she lost that one. But every night, when I looked at her curled up next to me, messy hair fanned across my pillow, I felt this overwhelming sense of gratitude that never dulled. I had loved someone who couldn't love me back. And now I was loved back, fully and loudly and without conditions. One day, while walking Coke through the park, I ran into Ryan. He looked surprised, then smiled awkwardly. "Long time," he said. "Yeah," I replied. "You look good." "I feel good," I said honestly. "Sophie's been good for you," he added. "Better than I ever was for Emily," I said, not to be petty, just to be truthful. He nodded, eyes far away. "You know, she misses you." "Emily, I mean." "I know," I said, and that was all. Sophie met me by the fountain 10 minutes later, her hand finding mine as naturally as breathing. "You okay?" she asked. "Yeah," I said. He brought up Emily. Again. She squeezed my hand. "Let's not waste today on people who already live in yesterday." And just like that, we moved on. Because Sophie always knew when to turn the page. Months passed. Then a year. And on a rainy afternoon filled with thunder and warm socks, Sophie found a ring box I'd clumsily hidden in the flower jar. Yes, the flower jar, don't ask why. And she opened it, gasped, and looked up at me with trembling hands. "Is this for real?" she whispered. "Very real," I said, suddenly more nervous than I'd ever been in my life. "You want it?" "Only if it comes with your terrible lasagna for life," she said, tears already slipping down her cheeks. "Deal," I said. "But you're doing the dishes." She tackled me, again, and Coke barked like he was officiating the whole thing. And maybe he was. I used to think love was painful, a test you had to keep failing until someone finally saw your worth. But now I know it's a quiet space where someone hands you the last dumpling, remembers how you like your coffee, and stays, not because you beg, but because they choose you every day. That's what Sophie gave me. And this time, I didn't run. I stayed.